You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that reveals facts, truth, research, and statistics and never messes around. We lay down the entire truth about everything regarding your Detroit and Michigan sports teams, no matter if it's good or bad. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no coddling, no pop culture, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website at MichiganSportsTruth.com, follow us on Twitter at Michigan_Truth, and like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth. The hosts of the Michigan Sports Truth podcast do not take any suggestions or criticism from any member of its audience on how it should be run. It is up to the host to decide what they want to cover. They also do not intend to be any amount of popular in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Additionally, the views of the audience, right or wrong, do not reflect the actual truth revealed on this program.
And welcome to episode 317 of the Week in Review edition of the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts via iTunes. I'm Taylor Phillips alongside Buck Geno on Facebook Messenger. Follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips and follow Buck Geno on Twitter at BuckGeno3, triple I for Roman numerals. Got 4 teams to cover tonight. And we're going to start with the Michigan State Spartans football team.
Touchdown, MSU!
According to the Lansing State Journal via Bleacher Report, former wide receiver Keith Mumphrey, previously with the Houston Texans, is suing Michigan State University for his dismissal that ruined his NFL career. Now, I don't know if I got the article to you guys in the private group chat on Facebook Messenger, but
yes.
Yep, you read it. He got into some legal trouble again. This is the same thing, and it just speaks for itself. MSU is getting in even more trouble.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this situation, it's going to be real tough for Keith Mumphrey to say that he's being blackballed from the NFL, that he has been deprived of future earnings as a professional, whatever, not a football player, but just in a profession. And this is a really odd case because, number one, as we have seen, the NFL is no stranger to hiring or signing players that have a history of sexual assault on their record, whether it be allegations or even indictments and perhaps even convictions. So if I'm the defense, my first point is going to be that other players have navigated the same path that Keith Mumphrey has and have still become gainfully employed in the NFL. I think this is something that is a little bit of a reach. I'm not saying that Keith Mumphrey's situation was handled with perfection, because as we've learned over the last 6 to 12 months, that Michigan State and sexual assault investigations aren't exactly going together very well. We'll just say that. So to that point, I think that Keith Mumphrey probably can at least point to some things that Michigan State did incorrectly or failed to adhere to the institutional guidelines or other guidelines that need to be followed in such cases. But to say that he's been deprived of a career because of the way that they handled it, I think that's a stretch. So I don't know exactly what will come of this. Maybe he hopes to get a settlement. Maybe he hopes to have some sort of judgment for him. I'm not really sure of the end game for this move. But this litigation, obviously, it looks like people think that this has merit, or at least somebody representing Keith Mumphrey believes it has merit, and they believe they can win this case and get some financial reparations for their client. So I think it's going to be a tough sled to prove that he was unfairly dismissed from the team, which in effect has not allowed him to be signed by an NFL team, nor pursue a graduate degree and get gainful employment. Those are two separate things. Being dismissed from a football team and getting a job. Because those aren't something that you necessarily are reporting on a job interview, because even though it's public record, because of the way that college football is publicized now, you can't ask that question if it's not a conviction. So if he's going to jobs and people are turning him down, and they're turning him down because of that, maybe he would go after those parties because he can try to claim discrimination, because those are things that can be based on third-party knowledge rather than asking them about convictions and other things. So, it's kind of a complicated case, because you have Mumphrey, who has some factor that indeed he is right. I think that they probably didn't handle the investigation cleanly, and I don't think they probably went through the process that they should have. But it's going to be hard, really. His attorney is going to be very hard-pressed to prove that has essentially made him unemployable, and also has restricted him from being able to get gainful employment outside of football. So I think this is an interesting story. I think we'll probably hear more of this, but I think eventually that Keith Mumphrey's case, unless Michigan State decides that they're going to just write a check to make this go away, like they have with the Larry Nassar case, unless they're in that mood, I just don't think that Keith Mumphrey is going to get much of anything as far as financial satisfaction from this. He might get a finding that, Michigan State did indeed bungle the investigation, and perhaps he was dismissed unfairly, as the guidelines suggest that he should have been tried through. But to say that he's without employment and can't get a job in the NFL because he was dismissed because of sexual assault, I mean, there are guys in the NFL right now that had that problem, and they are just fine with the contract that they have. So it's a tough case to prove in terms of his financial reparation, but I think it's something that will bear some attention, just because, like everything else that comes out with Michigan State, we're probably going to find out more things that they don't want to have come out, and maybe Michigan State decides that discretion is the better part of valor on this, and they cut Mr. Mumphrey a check to make this go away. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're going to keep an eye on that and see what happens sometime in the future. Transitioning from college to pro football.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Like Ed and I went over last Wednesday, the NFL is deciding not to discipline Lions' new head coach Matt Patricia for his sexual assault allegations in '96. The case was dropped and never made it to trial. The accuser dropped those charges before they even went to trial, and everybody, like you pointed out, everybody, 100% of the population was defending him except us. So the majority rules unanimously.
Yeah, I mean, with Matt Patricia, it's real hard to say that this, unless there was some smoking gun that was pulled out from the records that were kept at that point. I mean, it's really hard to point back and say that he was guilty of anything. He went through the process that was put forth at that time. Now, was that process, and when we call into question those processes, you get down the slippery slope of retrying somebody 22 years later through the court of public opinion. And so the NFL has to just go based on what they know, what the facts are that are presented, and what they can find out about the incident via the legal process that was undertaken when Matt Patricia was arrested, indicted, and then subsequently the case was dismissed because the victim at the time did not feel that she could weather the stress of going through a trial. Why she decided that, we may never know, because there are a lot of different theories, but we weren't there. So what you can say is that Matt Patricia went through the legal process, and even though it may have been flawed, that was the process that was back then. There has been no new evidence to light, and I don't think that Matt Patricia intentionally deceived the Lions by not mentioning it. I think that it's somewhat disingenuous disingenuous for Bob Quinn to talk about how they didn't know this information. They worked together for 11 years. You would think at some point, somehow, some way, that even in a casual conversation off the record, that this might have come up. Somehow. I mean, you would think. But we weren't there. So, that said, the NFL can't do anything because there's nothing for them to point to. All they can do is point to the fact that he was arrested 22 years ago for an alleged sexual assault. He was indicted, and then the case was dropped due to the fact that the victim did not want to come forward and testify. And if that were to happen today, I think the same result would also happen, and that would be that they wouldn't endure any supplemental discipline from the NFL because nothing came through as far as a punishment. I know they're hypersensitive to such issues in the NFL, but you can't supersede the legal process to make your image better. And the NFL right now is starting to get to that point where somebody is accused of sexual assault, somebody like Ezekiel Elliott, and even though all the evidence points to him not having that event happen, he was still suspended for 6 games because the NFL wanted to make an example of him. And it gets real tough now, and I think that this is a pendulum that can swing both ways, and it can do so rather violently. And right now I think we're seeing that the burden of proof is truthfully right now on the NFL to say, if they're going to give him any discipline, if I'm Matt Patricia and they say, well, you're suspended for a couple of games, and you say, why? Because something happened 22 years ago? That's just going to be too tough to navigate. So I think the NFL decided that it wasn't something that they could act on. And even though the court of public opinion may have a different idea of what should have happened, I think the NFL acted prudently, and they couldn't suspend Matt Patricia for something that at this point nobody even knows if it actually happened other than the people that were there. So the process at the time was followed, and that's all you can do at that point.
Because the only person that was there is the accuser, the victim,
yeah, I mean,
and she dropped the charges.
Other than Matt Patricia and the third person that was there, the 2 males that were named, the only other person that knows is the accuser. And she's not coming forward. And I think that's also a little bit telling because truly, I mean, in today's society, the pendulum has swung in favor of people that make these accusations. And not to say that that's wrong, it's just that's the way it is right now with the way that society is. If you're making those accusations, a lot of people are guilty before they're proven innocent, which is the reverse of the law. But that said, a lot of people are coming forward with these types of stories, but I think it is somewhat telling that this person hasn't been found, nor has this person come forward and said anything about this that I have been able to find. So I'm sure that if you can find these other records, I'm pretty sure that somebody has to know something about it, and I'm sure the accuser has seen this in papers and on social media or TV or what have you. If they haven't come forward, that's a little bit telling. Maybe they have some hang-ups mentally because of what happened, and that is something that is possible. But even so, I think that it's telling that the victim, the alleged victim, hasn't come forward with this new information because of the way that we are with society right now. Clearly, the momentum is with the accusers, and not that any of them don't have merit. I don't want anybody to take that the wrong way at all. It's just the times have changed, and people are more comfortable with coming forward with these types of things. And everybody's a little bit different mentally, and maybe she doesn't feel that she can still go through it, but I think it's a little bit telling that there has been no contact from the person that made the accusations that led to the indictment of Matt Patricia and his teammate. That's something that still tells me that, maybe, just maybe, that something may not have happened, or at least it didn't happen the way that they had thought about it. It's like one of those movies where you have the narration or the point of view from one person, and then you switch the same situation to another person, and the complete tenor of the situation changes. And somebody who thinks they're being funny, and then somebody else is looking at them and thinks they're dope. This could be something that indeed was, cross signals. Somebody thinks something happened, somebody else thinks something else happened, and it's really the waters are too muddy for somebody to really make a definite argument one way or the other. So I think the NFL really couldn't do anything more with this case, or this incident, I should say. And I think that they were prudent to get it out of the way and say, hey, look, we can't find anything. If something else pops up, I'm sure we can come back to this. But at this point, we've got nothing other than what everybody else knows.
Right. So there's pretty much nothing left. So I think Patricia's off the hook. Everybody else in the lines is off the hook. So I guess the only thing everybody can do is just move on.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I don't want to say unfortunately, but I mean, there's not really any other choice at this point.
Right. So, gonna transition to basketball, and this is the big topic we're going to talk about here this weekend.
Left sideline, 3, and he answers.
Happy Memorial Day ahead of time. The Pistons have hired Ed Stefanski as team president, and they are pursuing Dwayne Casey, former Toronto Raptors head coach, as head coach, the Pistons' next head coach. Now, from what I've read in that article, in that source, Stefanski and Casey have worked with each other in the Toronto Raptors organization before, and they've had a mutual history with one another, and this could lead to a possibility that the Pistons could actually hire Dwayne Casey to work with Ed Stefanski once again. The only thing they're looking for is a general manager yet.
And that's going to be the key piece, because Ed Stefanski right now he's going to be the senior advisor in the front office that is going to be basically consulting on how to overhaul the front office. So he is not the team president.
Okay.
He's not, he is an advisor, which means that he is basically an outside consultant that is going to be shaping how this front office is formed. And I think that when you look at Ed Stefanski's hire, there's a lot of different things that come to mind. And as you mentioned, Dwayne Casey has worked with him before. So there's not a lot of tea leaves to be read that says that Tom Gores is probably hot on Dwayne Casey's trail for the head coaching job. Now, obviously, you have a general manager that needs to be hired as well. And if you're a general manager, whether that be somebody new or somebody that was already with the team, I really think that if you're a general manager, you don't want to be handed a coach, because that's usually a formula that tends to be quite toxic. If you're the general manager, you want to be responsible for everything that you can be when you get into that job. So if you're hired as a general manager into a situation, typically a new broom sweeps clean, is what my dad used to say. And when you have a new general manager, nobody's really safe. And if you're going to hire a head coach before you hire a general manager, you're basically telling that general manager, hey, we want you to run this team, but we've already set the table for you. All you need to do is, do your thing from here on out. And I don't think that's going to be the case here. I didn't think the Pistons would move this fast on it. I've been 0 for 2 on my Pistons guesses with Tom Gores, so I'm just going to stop at this point. I didn't think Tom Gores was going to fire Stan Van Gundy. He did. I didn't think Tom Gores was going to hire somebody right off the bat after our last week's episode, and he did that too. So I'm done with trying to guess what Tom Gores is doing, because I have no idea. What I can say is I really don't see them, if they're going to hire a general manager, I think that you have to give that general manager at least the voice in the room before you hire Dwayne Casey. Now, are there a lot of general managers that don't like Dwayne Casey? Probably not. There's only one that I can think of, and he lives in Toronto right now. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that have a lot of respect for Dwayne Casey. So that's probably not as much of an issue as I'm trying to make it out to be, but it still bears mentioning, because the general manager position that Stefanski is going to be overseeing the hiring process of. If he worked with Dwayne Casey before, he being Stefanski, he's a big fan of Dwayne Casey. I'm sure that Tom Gores is probably a fan of Dwayne Casey to some degree. So I think it makes sense for Dwayne Casey to be approached by the Pistons for their head coaching job. But the general manager job also needs to be filled. It'll be interesting to see how they maneuver on that. And with the draft coming up, even though the Pistons only have one pick and it's deep in the second round, you still want to have everything in place. You don't want to be scrambling around because very soon after the draft becomes Summer League. And after Summer League, you got preseason and the end of the season. I mean, we're only, truthfully, for the opening games of the regular season for the NBA, you're 4.5 months away. That's not a lot of time to monkey around if you really think about it. So I think the Pistons will probably, I think that they'll need to have things in place, but we'll really see in the next couple of weeks, I think, this front office and these positions start to take shape and see who's going to be sitting there. And everybody is reading into the fact that Stefanski being hired is kind of a paving the way for Dwayne Casey to be hired. I'm not necessarily 100% sold on that, but it is pretty compelling that he has worked with Casey before, and I'm sure that familiarity is a key component of who they're going to hire next.
So that's going to be graded in our What's Your Grade segment right at the very end of the show. So, one team left to cover, and that's the Tigers.
That one is long gone.
Tigers are now 23-29, second place in the AL Comedy Central, 3.5 games back at the Cleveland Indians, who are 26-25. The Tigers are 6th worst in the American League. Quite a few spots back still in that wild card race. They took they lost 2 of 3 to the Minnesota Twins. They expectedly took 2 of 3 at home against the Chicago White Sox, who have a very terrible record, even though they're in 4th place, 16-34. That spreads out the entire Comedy Central division. The Indians are only 1 game over 500, and they're in 1st place in that hilarious division. And the Tigers got humiliated on Saturday. Mike Fiers was crap. Shane Green almost blew a save on Sunday. Francisco Liriano is starting to age.
Francisco Liriano had a little bit of a rough go. And I think that is due a little bit in part to his age, as you mentioned. I mean, he's not spring chicken anymore, but he's got a lot of miles on that surgically repaired arm. I think it was kind of hilarious how the Fox Sports Detroit crowds were trying to make a case for him having good stuff. He gave up 5 earned runs in 5 innings. That's not good stuff.
Yeah, FSD is lazy.
That's getting hit all around the yard and walking guys. I mean, let's call it what it is. He hit some atom balls, but he gave up 5. That's a 9 ERA. That's not good. Nope. I don't care what stuff he had. He was getting hit. So, that said, Liriano had a bit of a rough start. The Twins, they take 2 of 3 from the Tigers, and then you mentioned Tigers coming back and taking 2 of 3 from the putrid White Sox. As you mentioned, Shane Green almost closed the save. They somehow hang on to win 3-2, and they're 2nd place in the Central. They're 6th worst out of 15 teams, but yet they're in 2nd place in their own division. That's how bad the AL Central is right now. They're tied with Minnesota for 2nd place.
Which is worse? The AL Comedy Central or Fox Sports Detroit? Because they never tell anything like it is. They always represent the team and tell everything positive about the Tigers, Lions, Red Wings, and Pistons, no matter what. They can second deck personally.
When you talk about that, obviously they get their checks from the team, so it makes a little bit of sense, but the people that are watching, I'm a big Tigers fan. I grew up with them, but they don't interest me this year that I'm going to sit in front of a TV and watch them for 3 hours. It just isn't going to happen. Partly because I don't know anybody that's on the team, and partly because they're not scheduled to be good. And so I'm not going to paint myself as a bandwagon fan. I'm following the team. I can tell you what's going on. I can start to name some of the players now. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to sit there every night for 3.5 hours and watch them. It just is not going to happen. And even at the height of their success, it was tough. I mean, baseball is probably the toughest sport to follow as a hardcore fan, simply because of the sheer number of games and the amount of time it takes. So, like I said, I can tell you how good or bad they're doing, and I can see, snippets of games and start to pick up things. And there's a lot of people on Twitter that are good follows that help me fill in the gaps. But I mean, it's just not a compelling team. There's no exciting stars. Cabrera's hurt, so they're not. I mean, they just don't have any real marketable names, and they're kind of a nondescript team.
That's part of the rebuild.
Founder around 400, 450, and fall and miss the playoffs. I mean, that's just not very interesting. I mean, they'd be more interesting if they were losing like the White Sox are losing, just because it'd be interesting to see what the attitude was then. But they were projected to not even break 70 wins. That's something that's still in doubt. So it's just not an exciting team. And I'm glad that they're playing hard, because that's what you want out of a young ball club that you're trying to rebuild with. You want to see who's going to show up every day. But it's just not enough. It's just not compelling enough for me to sit there and glue my face to the TV for 3.5 hours to watch them.
Right. So yeah, there are a lot of fans who there's still plenty of fans who believe this team is great when it's not. But there are even more fans who actually follow the team like we do, and it's not good. The Tigers are a very, very bad team. They can, like I pointed out, 6th worst in the American League, like 6 or 7 spots away from those wild card spots, 9 games back, 3.5 games back in that crappy AL Comedy Central division. And one thing's for sure, the Tigers will never reach first place in that division. Period. They'll most certainly won't even coming in anywhere close in that to those wild card spots either.
No, and that's just not interesting to me.
They don't even tend to do either.
I mean, and the Tigers were good, and now they're not, so the interest is going to wane. Casual fans going to step away, and that's how it is. That's what they are.
Yeah. Yeah, even if they were good, they would still never win a World Series in that era. They haven't even won a World Series since the year I was born, 1984. So, let's get to that What's Your Grade segment.
Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade.
And the one event we're going to grade is the Pistons hiring Ed Stefanski as team president. What's your grade, Buck?
I'm going to give it a B. The reason I'm going to give it a B is because it seems that even though there are some people that don't think it was a good hire, there's a lot of people that think it was a step in the right direction for Tom Gores to get somebody in there that's a basketball guy that is outside the organization from when he took it over. And he is trying to make this team and this franchise into his own image. Stan Van Gundy was brought on. It didn't work out, but there was still a lot of lingering remnants from the old regime that were still there. So I think that this is going to be a turning point for them. If it's going to be good or bad, we don't know. Stefanski might help run it into the ground. Who knows? But you got to get somebody from outside the organization that is a basketball person and let them look at things objectively and start to make this franchise what Tom Gores hopes it is, which is a contender. And you have the Eastern Conference right now with LeBron James. Nobody knows where he's going to be next year. The Celtics are going to be there for a little bit. The Raptors are a good team, but they keep running into the Cleveland Cavaliers in the playoffs. After that, it's kind of wide open. The Milwaukee Bucks are certainly a decent team in the Central Division, but they're not unbeatable. There's not a lot of teams right now in the Eastern Conference that you can look at and say, boy, that's a heck of a team they got right there. So the Pistons need to make some progress, and I think that's the first step is to get somebody that hasn't been around the team to come in with a fresh look and see what they can do.
Sorry to make this a little sour, but I'm going to give the grade a C plus because I can forecast some loyalty between Ed Stefanski and Dwayne Casey ahead of time as the years approach. And they're going to give Stefanski a 3-year contract as senior advisor. And sometimes loyalty can bite them right in the ass, and the Pistons and still wouldn't make the Pistons good enough to reach their ultimate potential, and that's why I'm marking it a C plus.
I mean, that's a valid point. I mean, Dwayne Casey did what he did with the Raptors, which they are certainly a better team than the Pistons are. Mm-hmm. So there's something to be said for that. I'm not going to disagree with you. I think that maybe it's Stefanski bringing in Dwayne Casey, and maybe it's not the right move. Who knows? But I can tell you this: they weren't going anywhere with the people they had, and so that was the reason my grade was a little bit higher. But I can certainly see where you're coming from, and it's valid. I mean, you could have those guys coming in, and maybe they don't do the job. So we really don't know. But in my view, I think that the Pistons really needed an outside voice, somebody that hadn't been around the team, to really start to look at this and see what they can do. So only time will tell how good this hire really is.
Right. Exactly. So that's our What's Your Grade segment. So for our audience, if they have a grade for each event, post them in the comment bank in this episode. Please don't go out of line. And that's episode 317 of the Week in Review edition of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Before we sign off, we want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media and have their friends share that as well on their personal timelines, because we want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast is searching for a wider audience that has fans of sports, especially our teams in the state of Michigan. So please spread the word about the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts via iTunes, its Facebook page, and its Twitter handle at Michigan_Truth. I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips and Buck Geno. We'll talk to you next week on episode 317 of the Week in Review. Buck, talk to you later.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
The hosts of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast do not take any suggestions or criticism from any member of its audience on how it should be run. It is up to the host to decide what they want to cover. They also do not intend to be any amount of popular in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Additionally, the views of the audience, right or wrong, do not reflect the actual truth revealed on this program.
Mission complete.